Welcome to Visual Art Photography Tutorials. I'm Ray Scott. Today on Short Exposure, it's part 2 of making your subject the center of attention. All right, so we're drawing the viewer's eye to the subject in the photograph. In the first tutorial on this, in part 1, we used the edge of the frame, selective color, shallow depth of field, and we saw how you could frame the subject to make it stand out. If you'd like to see that video, you can click on the banner that just popped up on your screen, and it'll take you directly to part 1. Now in part 2, 4 more ideas on how to draw the viewer to your subject. The first one will be to use what I call selective light. In other words, use light to draw interest into the image. Like here, in a lighthouse, the light coming down from somewhere, from the top, from the roof of the lighthouse, plus you have the diagonal staircase, which is always kind of mysterious and nice, but this light, the light here, if the light wasn't here, it just wouldn't have that, it wouldn't be drawing your eye quite as much, but you have the staircase and then you have this light up here and you kind of want to go up the stairs and find out what's going on up above. So using light. With these flowers, it almost looks like the image was taken at night, and that's because I darkened the whole thing and then selectively lit each flower. And the effect is that, of course, you're going to the petals and you're going to the center of the flower. I use this image for framing to show you how if you framed your subject, this was in the first tutorial in part 1, how that could be effective in highlighting the gentleman here, but also the light, sunlight shining off of the door and off of him. It kind of highlights that particular subject. I also used this in part 1, but I didn't talk about the shaft of light coming in here. And that also draws your eye to island. And it's also the only thing that's really sharp back here is island, but also the light helps to draw your eye to that as well. Okay, idea number 2 for today, for part 2, is fill the frame. Now, if you fill the frame, kaboom, you know, there's nothing else to look at. There's nowhere else to go. This is a stylized version of some CDs, some compact discs. And yes, your eye is going to be going all around the frame, but you're locked in. There, you know, that frame has been filled. Same thing here. Lots of diagonal lines and so on and so forth, and your eye's moving around, but you definitely have nowhere else to go but to look at these colored pencils. So that's filling the frame. Third idea, make the subject small and isolate it. It almost sounds a little counterintuitive. You almost expect, well, you know, if you want to draw attention to something, make it big in the frame, and that does work. But sometimes if you make it small, the eye can't help but go there. Okay? The subject here, small, your eye goes to him. Also over here to this bench up on the rise. These two small objects keep your eye going back and forth and back and forth. It's a nice sunset. It's obviously evening or early morning, but in this case it's evening. But your eye just keeps on going back to the figure here and the bench, keeping things small. Kind of like a minimalist technique. A blank sky, no clouds. Nothing going on down here on the ground. Your eye can't help but go to this small bale of hay. Yet it can't go anywhere else. How about this one? Pretty nice sky. It's the evening, but these two guys out on the canoe down here, they're relatively small in comparison to the rest of the image, but they are the main subject. No question about that. Now this one's a little bit different. Turn to black and white. It's a very, very busy image, and quite frankly, I don't really care for it that much. But to tutorial purposes, I'm using it because, yes, your eye is going to this gentleman sitting in this chair looking out over the ocean, no question about that, and it's going there because it's red, selective color, something we talked about in part 1, but also he's very small. He's very small in this image. And now, if he wasn't in red, your eye would have a hard time picking him out, no question about that. But the fact that he's small and, again, sort of towards the edge of the frame and all that sort of thing, plus the selective color, adds to your eye going to him. And I'm showing you this one because here's a case where the figure in this image is relatively small, but there's so much going on. It's so busy, all this rock and everything else. He's almost lost in it. He's not really highlighted as much as he should be. I mean, you might want to, in post-production, maybe make everything very dark and kind of light him up. Maybe that would work. But in this particular case, not a bad shot or anything, but he's not, you see him, but there's so much else going on. It's so busy, he's almost lost in all of the rock. Something to be careful about when you're trying to isolate a subject. Lastly, use lines to lead you to the subject. Now, here's a case where the lines take you directly to the subject, the bus, which is coming down the hill. All right, so it's very direct. Your eye is going to keep on going back to this blue bus. Over here, these shadows will lead you up the hill and to the trees, but also to the man standing up at the top there. So while the shadows are not directly leading to the man, it's close enough that your eye is going to go to the silhouette of him. Now here's another way to use lines, but they're not really leading you anywhere. Okay, this particular boardwalk is not taking you to a subject. What it's taking you to is the unknown. So in this particular image, the subject really is the unknown, and you can use lines to lead you to the unknown. You kind of want to walk down this boardwalk and find out what's on the other side of the hill. Same thing over here. Really nice texture in the wood, and it's a warped boardwalk and everything else, but it's not really leading you to anything. That if a person were standing here, say, okay, the boardwalk would be leading you to the person, but it's not really leading you to anything except the unknown, and you kind of want to go down the boardwalk and find out what's around the corner, what's around the bend. So you can use lines that way too. And as a sort of extra tip for part 2 of this tutorial, center the subject, fill the frame, make the subject big, and you shallow depth the field, and hey, you can't help but look at the subject, right? Drawing the viewer's eye to your subject. That was the subject of today's tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you that it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.